Good morning. It's nice and early. Getting ready to head out on a grand adventure. Just wanted you to hear the pretty birds. They're wishing us good luck on our journey. Good morning again. So I came to the gas station, and once again, we have and this one is a 2006 or 2000. Anyway, thanks, Mom. I know she's with me. 2-hour journey. Entering into Castle Country. It's getting pretty down here. Okay, I made it to Salina, Utah, and I'm parked out here in front of my favorite cowboy store. You can see there's a horse mounted up on top of the roof right here. And if you ever come on down here, you'll find the best selection of leather goods and hats and boots if you're into that kind of thing. I just think it's fun. So next time you're down here, come by. I can't go in there today. It's not open right now. It's too early in the morning. But it's a fun cowboy getaway. In June of 1873, Brigham Young called some gentlemen from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, including some Indian interpreters,
to go down and explore this area, the Grass Valley, for settlement and to make peace with the Indians. Chief Tabiona accompanied the party and acted as guide and peacemaker. They camped near Fish Lake, where they explained their mission to a group of Indian braves who were led by Chief Paganiap. The Indians from the surrounding territory met at Cedar Grove on July 1st of 1873, where the chiefs pledged peace with a handshake. This pledge was never broken.
Of another summit, 8,385 feet, and we are about 40 miles from our destination. I'm in Torrey, Utah, and beware of this guy. I've been watching for him all the way from a little town called Sigurd all the way down here. He never moves, but he sure watches out for you, so beware. Okay, just advice. If you ever come to Capitol Reef National Park, make sure you stop at this little house and go in and buy some pie. And I'm just coming over to say hello to our friendly horse. Hi, baby. Hello. Hello, baby. Hello, baby. Hello. You're beautiful. Hello. We have arrived at the location that we're going to enter for the journey today, and the reason why I brought you all to Capitol Reef National Park. This is the Grand Wash, right through here. We are headed that direction.
we're starting our journey down the Grand Wash. As we go along, I'll tell you the story of why we're here. This is the Grand Wash that goes along with the legend and the alluring and endearing history of a famous Utah outlaw by the name of Butch Cassidy. This Grand Wash is a location that he actually rode through when he was a bad guy, when he was an outlaw. Butch was actually born in 1866, and his real name was Robert Leroy Parker. He was the oldest of 13 children, and of course he was born into a very loving and religious Mormon family in the little town of Beaver, Utah. He grew up having a pretty mundane, normal childhood until when he was a teenager, he met a cattle rustler, a cowboy named Mike Cassidy. In fact, Mike Cassidy is the person who taught Butch how to shoot a gun, which would become very helpful for him later in life. Always remember to carry your water. Take quite a bit when you're down in these red rock areas. And here's our sign to Cassidy Arch Trail. Here we go. Are you ready for some fun? I've hiked this trail multiple times. And for those of you who know my sweet boy and how difficult of a time he has walking, he actually was able to hike this trail at one point with me. So if he can do it, anyone within reasonable health can do this trail. It's not that hard. The elevation gain isn't too strenuous, and it's 1.5 miles. Just take your time. Look around and explore all of the nooks and crannies of this beautiful canyon and this hike. It's absolutely stunning. Anybody would love it. Back to Butch. So there was another gentleman by the name of Harry Longabout who stole a horse from the 3D Ranch up in the area of Belfouche, Black Hills, Wyoming, that kind of area near Devil's Tower. And he was sentenced to 18 months in prison at the prison called Sundance. So, can you figure out who that was? You're right, if you guessed Sundance. Butch's sidekick, his famous sidekick. Butch and Sundance ended up meeting in Telluride, Colorado. That's where they formed their friendship. And lo and behold, one day, in fact it was June 24th, 1889, the San Miguel Bank was robbed. And Butch and Sundance,
How are you?
as well as the Wild Bunch,
Eat something yummy.
they used fresh relay horses in a Pony Express style to make their getaways. So they had horses stashed and ready so they could get away from the posses. They had a hideout, and it's known as the Hole in the Wall hideout. However, Butch also had a hideout here in Capitol Reef National Park, of course before it was a national park, in this very Grand Gulch or Grand Wash Canyon. And legend states that he even hid some treasure in one of the crevices or rocks. Do you think it's still there? Wouldn't that be fun to go look for that treasure? The interesting thing about Butch and Sundance is they would commit a crime and then they would go straight for a year or two. It became a pattern over time, and for some reason they just couldn't stay out of the criminal element. During one of the times of good citizenship, Butch worked in a butcher shop up in Rock Springs, Wyoming, and that is where he took on his first name of Butch.
Okay, just a thought. Didn't God make the perfect trout? And of course, when I start talking, the wind starts. It's beautiful. If you look down here, there's the parking lot. And probably it's going to start clearing out pretty soon. A lot of people were able to get here earlier. There's a lot of cars that are going now along the road.
Well, Butch's good citizenship didn't last forever, and in 1892 he was once again arrested for horse stealing. This time he was caught and sentenced to the Wyoming Territory Prison, and that's just up there by Laramie. And so he definitely started to become what was called maybe a hardened criminal. And in August of 1896, himself and his friend Sundance and some other gentlemen ended up in the small town of Montpelier, Idaho. Well, Butch had family up in that area, that's the Bear Lake region, and so he was familiar with that territory. And they went to Montpelier, Idaho, and so that on August 13th of 1896, they could rob a bank. And they did. They robbed the Montpelier, Idaho bank, and they stole $7,000. Butch took this money because he wanted to help out one of his friends who needed some legal fees paid in Utah to get off the hook for murder. They say Butch was a very loyal friend and, of course, wanted to help out his buddy. He did. The $7,000 helped his friend go from first-degree murder to manslaughter charges, and he was sentenced to life in prison. However, he was able to get out on early parole, and that man's name was Matt Warner. Well, during another dry spell, before Butch and Sundance and some of the gang went out seeking more trouble, they created a hideout near Hanksville, Utah, known as the Robber's Roost. And Robber's Roost has a nice fresh spring. They built cabins there, and they would rustle some cattle, and they would keep the cattle down there hidden from the ranchers. And so they had a pretty nice little setup going.
We are approaching our first cairn. For those of you who are not familiar with hiking on Red Rock, these are common ways to mark a trail.
All right, everyone, look across the valley. There it is, the famous arch named after this notorious outlaw. That's the Cassidy Arch. This view is spectacular. Can you see it? Butch and Sundance, once again, after creating their little Robber's Roost utopia, decided it's time to go make another heist. And this time in 1897, they chose to go after the payroll of the coal mine in Castlegate, Utah. And so they rode up there, they had their relay horses ready to escape, and they also cut the telegraph wires. So they just walked up to the paymaster, and with the bandanas secured around their faces, they held up the payroll and once again got away with another $7,000. Well, this notorious gang, they were starting to get very comfortable with making their robberies, and another criminal by the name of Kid Curry, you probably have all heard of him, was also joining into their gang here, and up in Belle Fourche in the Black Hills area. Once again in 1897, the bank was robbed, and half of the bank robbers went one way and the others went another way, and Butch and Sundance fled down to New Mexico to hide out for a while. But they just couldn't stay low for too long. They took their little break, worked some cattle ranches, took on some alias names until 1899. Well, in 1899, on June 2nd to be specific, the Overland Flyer Union Pacific Railroad was held up north of Laramie, Wyoming, near Wilcox, Wyoming. And they had the Wild Bunch flagged down the train with using red lanterns. The engineer thought there was an emergency on the track. But of course there was no emergency. And so they held up the train and they asked the money car guard to open up the money car. Well, he refused, and so they said, okay, fine, we'll just blow it up with some dynamite. You guys see the toad hiding up the rock? Check out this rock. See how it's split from falling from somewhere up in there. Kaboom! That must have been a loud crash. You think Butch heard it? Can you hear the crow? She looked clear across the canyon. Way over there. I've got it centered. The rocks remind me of a great big giant squirrel. Can you see the bushy tail sticking up? Okay, so you can see there's other trails. There's a sign right here to go to the right. I've never done that before. Or go to the left. We'll make it over to the arch. It says 0.5, so half a mile. And if you look down, you can see the trail continues. Do you see the cairn? There's the arch again. Let me zoom in on it. There. Do you remember that toad back there? I think I found its toadstool. What do you think? Kind of cute. We've entered into an area that looks a little different than the rest of the trail. It's more of the white or tannish sandstone. But there it is contrasted against the beautiful red. Amazing. Wish you were here. So Butch and the gang blew up the train car, and when they did that, they realized the money was in the safe. And so they tried to get the train money car guard to open the safe as well. Well, he had been so rattled by the explosion from the train car blowing up that he could not remember the combination. And so they're like, okay, well, fine. We'll just blow the safe up too. Well, they did, and the money went flying all over the place, as you can imagine. The $30,000 worth of it all over the place. And it did tear and rip some of the money up. And so they took off like a you-know-what out of HE double toothpick. And the sheriff followed. And unfortunately, the sheriff was killed in a shootout, and they think it was probably Harvey Logan that did the killing, and that was Kid Curry. Butch always maintained his innocence from killing people. That was not his thing.
still following the cairn. This little baby pile. And up here, one big truck. Look at it. Wow. The rangers have created monkey steps into the rock. This is new. These were not here before, and it was kind of tricky to get to the arch sometimes because of the difficulty of climbing up over the slickness of these rocks. So this is awesome. Okay, let's climb up these monkey steps. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, that made it so much easier. Yep, 2 little cairns. Getting closer. Okay, we've made it. We look right here. Arch. It's right here. Okay, one of my friends, and you know who you are, would not like this. Is he gonna rappel? Oh, I've never seen him do that before.
Like anchors in the rock.
Yeah. I didn't realize that they allowed that on. Oh, heck no. More guts than 200 more of my friends. can hear them. What an adventure. Are you all brave enough?
Do you remember when I stopped at the cute little pioneer farmhouse and I showed you all the picture of the pie curio? It was filled with a variety of delicious little personal pies, and I brought one with me. I'm not sure which one I have. I just grabbed one of the bags. So,
This one is, I believe it's the apple pie. And it smells like cinnamon. Yeah, it's the apple pie. And the other one I bought is mixed berry. So because we made it to the arch, it's up there. I'm seeing a little bit back there. We're going to celebrate our arrival and we're going to enjoy a little treat. Take it in. Look at that. Yep. It's quite delicious. So, Cassidy Arch is my favorite arch in Utah. And I was talking to another person, they asked me why. Or I said because it's named after Butch Cassidy. And it's the allure of the Old West and the Outlaws, and knowing that Butch came riding down that canyon, down through that wash, he had a secret hideout.
Butch was often referred to as the gentleman bandit, and that's because he had a really kind, gentle demeanor overall, and many attribute that to his upbringing with his Mormon family. He had a very soft-spoken father and a mother who was devoutly religious, and he carried a lot of that with him. Those traits were a part of his soul, even though he also had the flip side as the bad guy outlaw in his personality. Another train robbery occurred near Folsom, New Mexico, and Elsie Lay received a life sentence for this train robbery. Lonnie Logan, he was killed, and Sheriff Jesse Tyler, in pursuit, found and shot flat-nosed George Curry. And unfortunately, Sheriff Tyler was also then killed by Harvey Kid Curry Logan to avenge flat-nosed George's death. About that time, Butch Cassidy attempted to receive amnesty from Governor Herbert C. Wells. They told him they would grant it to him as long as he had no outstanding warrants or anything going on in his criminal history. And unfortunately, they did find for Butch, they found his wanted poster for murder. And Butch still maintained he never killed anyone, but he had to remain an outlaw.
Here goes the last guy.
Here you can see we are actually walking over to the top of the arch. We're going to walk on top of the arch and get our bird's eye view from that point. So don't worry, it's actually a lot wider than it appears to be from the point of view that we were sitting at watching the propellers. Probably, I would say about 20 feet across at least. All right, there's the chain that the propellers latch onto, and here is the arch. We are now making our way over onto it. See, it's not so bad. Even those of you who have maybe an extreme fear of heights, well, I don't know, you might be able to do this. I guess it depends on your level of fear. And that's looking back toward the point that we were sitting at. Looking back, we've now crossed over the arch the other direction, and that man in the blue, he is standing in the center of the arch. Everyone gets their turn.
There's the chain, and that's where they drop from. No, thank you. Woo! No, thank you. Okay, let's just go get one more picture of the arch. Alright, there's our canyoneers. Continuing to rappel down the canyon. It's pretty neat.
It looks like it's at such an angle that you're going to just like slide right into the hole.
Can you imagine the water roaring over these rocks and creating this?
Well, after a while, the Wild Bunch again got itching for some criminal activity, and so they headed up toward Tipton, Wyoming, where once again they robbed a train from the Union Pacific, and again they blew open the express car with all the money in it, and once again they escaped on their horses because they had the fresh relay horses, and they rode down through the Grand Wash and hid out in their little hideaway. Some people claim that they rode out to Winnemucca, Nevada, because there was another bank robbery on September 19th of 1900. This time the First National Bank was robbed. No one could identify the bank robbers, but again, the bank robbers used fresh relay horses to make their getaway. And so in 1900, in November, in Fort Worth, Texas, Butch and Sundance and the Wild Bunch found themselves at the Hell's Half Acre. This was a brothel, saloon type area of Fort Worth. And here is where they had their famous photo taken. It shows them in their really nice outfits, their suits, and they just look so gentlemanly. This was taken at the John Schwartz studio.
Here's those steps again. Let's climb back up. Nature made. Okay, that was fun. Sometimes you gotta go up to go down. Okay, we're back to that sign. Cassidy Arch. Okay, I think we're about to round the bend. To the point. No, this isn't it. I thought this was our last view of the arch, but it's not. There's more. Look at it one more time going down here. One more last look, at least along the hiking trail. This is kind of a cool view. Coming down, the trail has some really neat different shapes to the rocks and the formations. And the pine trees, the pinions are nicely twisted. Just beautiful. It was a beautiful day for hiking. It was hot and cold and windy and not windy. But overall, it was a great day. Oh, look at that peak. It looks just like Outlaw. That's pretty cool. I don't think I ever noticed that before. I think that looks like an alien head. There's the eye, and that one's elongated back. Kind of interesting. Here's our last look at the arch.
The famous Butch Cassidy Arch. I hope you all get a chance to come down and see this for yourself. So Butch and the gang, the Wild Bunch, they weren't too smart by taking that picture, because by this time, the famous Pinkerton detective agency from back east, they were hired to go after Butch and his gang. And that photograph was actually given to the Pinkertons, and now they had a face to the Outlaws, and so they knew who they were after. Butch and Sundance kind of made a big mistake with that one. The Pinkertons then used those pictures on the wanted posters, and so now everyone would be able to recognize those notorious Wild Bunch outlaws. So in 1901, Butch and Sundance's wife/girlfriend, they headed for South America on a steamship out of New York. They arrived in Argentina in late March. Well, down in Argentina, they used their wealth that they gained in the United States to purchase over 17,000 acres of land, and they had a nice 4-room cabin that was nicely kept, and perfume was kept in the bowls in each room to make it fragrant. However, they forgot the Pinkertons were still after them. The wanted posters were still distributed to South America. And Butch and Sundance, they went into town. They were known as the nice gentlemen from the Yankees from America. And yet, they always wore their guns on their hips. That made people a little uncomfortable.
Okay, everyone, here's your last look. We're about to round the bend. Look down the canyon. See how the water would flow out of that arch and around where the white line is on the rock, and down
Here where you can see the brown water streaks running down the cliffs. In 1905, there was another bank robbery in Argentina, and many people claim that Butch and Sundance did not commit that bank robbery. And then another one happened just north of that in Villa Mercedes, Argentina, and this time, of course, the posse pursued them. They knew they were in trouble, so they ended up selling their property, and they headed toward Chile, and then they ultimately ended up in Bolivia. On November 4th, 1904, in Tupiza, Bolivia, another mining company payroll was held up by two armed Yankees, according to witnesses. And so, of course, they identified them as Butch and Sundance. And they were followed by a posse, and they ultimately, supposedly, were surrounded. And how the story goes is that Butch put a bullet in Sundance's forehead and then turned the gun on himself and killed himself by a bullet through the temple. But many people dispute this. The two men were buried in the San Vicente Cemetery, and when the law came along, they had them exhumed and identified, and they were identified as the two men who robbed the bank or the payroll. But that didn't necessarily mean it was Butch and Sundance. They were just two white men. Fast forward to our day, and those bodies were once again exhumed, and some DNA testing was done on them. However, they were determined to be two men from Germany, and not Butch and Sundance. So the mystery remains. What did happen to Butch and Sundance? Well, there's more to that story. Well, as I said, if you remember, Butch Cassidy was the oldest of 13 children, and his baby sister's name is Lulu. And she tells a story of Butch Cassidy actually returning to their family home in Circleville, Utah, 17 years after the supposed killing of Butch and Sundance down in Bolivia. And she stated that they visited, or that Butch visited a number of times, and he also visited friends. There's letters he had written to different people who he cared about. And so, did he die in Bolivia or not? In 1980, Lulu visited the little mining community of Johnny, Nevada, which is near Pahrump, Nevada, and she went there to pay respects to her brother's grave. Her brother, whose name is Robert Leroy Parker, and she went to his grave. They know where it is. There are people who still know where it is, and she claims that is actually Butch Cassidy's grave, and that he was killed in a mining accident in 1940 by a pulley wheel. So a pulley wheel, I'll post a picture of one. And he was buried somewhere near the mine, although they won't reveal exactly where, and it's an unmarked grave, but she knows where it is, and some people nowadays still know where it is. And the interesting thing is, Butch's last job in life was as payroll guard of the mine. Isn't that ironic? I'm very interested in this Johnny mine and the location of the supposed Butch Cassidy grave. There's a lot more to Butch Cassidy and his legendary history. So this summer I will take you to some of the locations I talked about and we'll explore these areas. Isn't the Old West fun? Okay, we made it down. So this is the Grand Wash facing north, going toward the Castle Country and toward Castle Dell. And this is where he would have ridden down on his horse as fast as he could, trying to get away from the posse. Last look. So do you think he stashed some treasure in these hills, in these crevices of these rock canyons? Maybe someday someone will find one and then we'll know. Still in the Grand Wash, just walking to the car. Check out these steep, smooth walls. We were up there, way up on top. Not on the very, very top, but medium, like right there. It's part of the trail. Going up and around.
So do you guys see the Bigfoot face? Bigfoot. Oh, we found another little art. Can you see it right there? And down low.
I wanted to show you all that I only ate a part of the pie up on top of the arch. I didn't want to be a big old pie pig, but it was delicious. I finished it on the way home.
This is the Fremont River. It's flowing pretty well, I'd say. Beautiful. These are some big trees. I just want to give a shout out to this restaurant, the Hunt and Gather restaurant. It's in Torrey, Utah, right outside of Capitol Reef. If you do come down, I highly recommend this place. It is delicious. And I think it's probably on like the top 10 restaurants in Utah. It's so good. I'm not stopping there today only because I want to get home. I do have things to do, but it's wonderful. So I highly recommend it.